The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's GENETEC.com. And by the Change Execution Group. Visit 360lifetransformations.com. Before we get into today's show, I want to invite you to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast on a new platform. It's a text-based platform called Community. To join, all you have to do is text my community number, and that number is 647-372-2042. That number again is 647-372-2042. The first message is automated. It's just to get you set up and added into the system. Everything after that will be direct engagement with me. This platform will allow you to stay up to date on everything that we're doing on the Healthcare Security Cast, as well as engage with me one-on-one. Also, as we move forward, there'll be other opportunities to connect with study groups and special interest groups. Your information is kept private, and you can opt out at any time by simply texting STOP. Again, to join, just text JOIN to 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. Right now, text messages can only be received from Canada and the U.S.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, August 4th. Today I'm joined by Marilyn Hollier. Marilyn, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, Brian.
Now I'm going to start off with the loaded question so we can all get to know you. Who is Marilyn Hollier?
I like to think that I'm probably one of a kind, which is maybe a good thing. But I was supposed to be a teacher back in the day, but somehow I ended up in healthcare security. And once I realized that my destiny was this profession, I've embraced it passionately, starting with learning how to deal with the hospital environment at Grady Hospital in downtown Atlanta. And I was there during the 90s. I actually started at Emory, and then when I got my master's, I went to Grady, and I learned a lot in the 90s. We had the Olympics, so I had the Olympic bombings, and there were some other bombings in the neighborhood. I saw some shootings. I lived through a few infant abductions, so needless to say, Grady Hospital was my training ground. And in 1998, I took on my dream job at the University of Michigan. When I came in, I had the Rodney Dangerfield of security departments. They didn't even have 24-hour supervision, so I'm showing my age there with Rodney. But we built a program based on employee involvement, hospital security involvement, and becoming a part of the healthcare team. I used to say we need to become an irreplaceable part of the healthcare team here at University of Michigan, and we did it for 17 years and won 2 Lindbergh Bells, so I'm pretty proud of it. And then in 16, I decided to retire, and I've been doing security consulting ever since. And I really love consulting because now I can go in and hospitals want us there to help them be safer, help security directors get the resources that they sometimes don't get when they ask for it. But when someone else from the outside comes in and says, they really need a little bit more budget to do this kinds of training, it's usually much more receptive to the administration when they hear it from an outside person. So I'm really enjoying trying to help hospitals be safe.
Excellent. Now, you touched on your career there, and I'd just like to ask you, who were some of the people who either mentored you throughout your career or influenced you, and how has that impacted you today?
Wow. When I started this career, it was back in the early 80s, I hate to admit. And there weren't a lot of women in the field back then. So it was difficult, actually, finding mentors, especially when I wasn't in the military And so I didn't have any of that training going in. So I actually went to Emory University, and they happened to have a much more diverse department, believe it or not, in Atlanta in the 80s. And so I was hired by them. And Jan Freund helped me out a lot. Shay Steele helped me out on becoming a better police officer, because I had a education degree, but after 8 weeks in the police academy, I wasn't feeling so comfortable carrying a gun. Something was wrong with that picture, right? 4-year degree to teach and an 8-week class to carry a gun. So I seeked out police professionals to help me, which I think was very important in learning that, to me, a very serious role. And then when I went to Grady, during the Olympics, 1996, it gave me an opportunity because ASIS came down and had their conference in Atlanta, and I was able to meet a lot of healthcare security professionals, including Bonnie Michelman. And Bonnie helped me immensely in making the connections, the professional connections, the networking, recommendations, job opportunities. She was my savior and helped me get out of Grady, because I called it purgatory. It was a public hospital that didn't have very much budget. I loved working there, but their budget was killing me. And so Bonnie was big. Linda Glasson, another early on president of IHSS. Tom Kramer, another founder of IHSS. So I was right back when we were first getting our feet wet in this business. I got my CHPA in 1997 and my CPP in 1996. So some of my mentors are folks that have some have already retired, and many are baby boomers like myself. But I'm so proud of where we're at today. We've become a much more diverse association, a profession, and I'd like to keep that trend going.
Great, and yeah, a lot of familiar names there. And Bonnie Michelman is obviously one that gets mentioned quite a bit when I ask that question. Now, as far as IHSS is concerned, because the conversation did go that way as well. Can you talk about your involvement with the association over the years, even what you've been doing right now, helping transition the new executive director?
Yes, in 1996, I think is the year I joined IAHSS, and 96 or 97, because I got my CHBA in 97 in Reno. Alan Butler and I both got it at the same time. And so I was very fascinated with their training, because the healthcare environment's a gray world. It's, out in the streets, in the city streets, it's much more of a black and white world of what's the laws and what are not laws. And if you break the laws, you go to jail. In hospitals, I immediately learned that it was much more gray. People were acting out because they couldn't help themselves. You had mental health, you had alcohol, drugs, dementia, delirium, all of these things. And traditional security and police tactics were not effective in helping with the situations. And IAHSS provided healthcare specific training for folks working inside hospitals. So to me, it was a no-brainer to become associated with this association to support training for the hospital security staff. And then I became involved passionately in there as a volunteer leader. I worked on the training committee for quite a while. I then eventually ran for office and became president of IAHSS. During my tenure as president, the executive director retired or resigned. And so I was involved in bringing in Colleen Kucera for the new executive director back in 2014. And so basically for that year I was president, I was running IAHSS and being a director at University of Michigan's hospitals and health centers. And I had a new boss at the time too. So it was kind of an interesting time, but we managed to get through it. And Colleen was an outstanding hire and did a great job for us. And I stayed supporting IAHSS through my career. And as a consultant, the guidelines documents, books are like the Bible. So I'm very supportive of not only our training at IHSS, but our industry guidelines and security design guidelines are just outstanding resources for healthcare security professionals. So when Colleen decided to resign and move on to greener pastures, which she did after 5 years of making significant progress, I believe, in our association, I was asked to come help hire the new executive director. And I was honored for this and immediately accepted this opportunity and worked with the committee to help select our new executive director of Virginia, and Virginia is doing an outstanding job. When I took this role on, obviously I didn't know, just like all of you professionals didn't know, we were going to go into a pandemic. And 2020, our new decade, was going to have a whole host of new things for us to tackle. So I have stayed on a very minor role, but I think a very important role in guiding the association through this crazy pandemic year and our first, probably not last, virtual conference 2.0 in September. And I'm hoping we'll get folks to step up and sign on and participate in this new groundbreaking conference that we're doing. This may be our future. I'll find that crystal ball. Maybe then I'll be able to tell everybody what the future is.
No, definitely a lot of change this year, and obviously it's been very helpful being able to leverage your expertise during this time. Now, I want to go back to the first time where I encountered Marilyn Hollier. It was back in December of 2014. You were here local in Toronto doing a presentation, and the topic was making your security program invaluable. That's kind of where I would like to shift focus today now, and I know that's a topic that you're passionate about. Making your program invaluable or irreplaceable. So can you talk about some of the concepts behind that, some of the things that we can do to really integrate our programs into the healthcare environment?
As I said earlier, when I went to work at the University of Michigan, I felt like I had the Rodney Dangerfield of security departments, because the officers felt like they were not getting any respect from their community. It sounds familiar, because when I first got into law enforcement, I heard that all the time. It's us against them. And I immediately met with all my staff and said, if you want to get respect, you have to earn respect, and you have to build trust with your community. And what does that mean? It means you have to get involved and build relationships with your community. So we set sail for that, and I believe in it, and I think it's the right way to go. So what does that mean? It means, number one, you have to hire the right staff, right? So you hire the right security officers. They have the skill sets you need that can manage a gray world, because sometimes rules have to be bent to do the right thing. So you have to hire the right staff. You have to train them to understand their role and to have the skill sets to de-escalate situations and properly handle disruptive situations when need be. And then you have to get them to take some ownership in what they're doing, the mission behind the hospital, right? To buy into a hospital's mission. It's really not hard, because what we're trying to save people's lives, but still the officers needed to feel like they were a part of that health saving team. So giving them, so that's when I involved community policing, but I called it patrolling, because my folks aren't police. Campus University of Michigan Police Department are full-blown police, and anytime we needed them, they were there within seconds, minutes when we needed that. But mostly we needed staffing to go and help the nurses up on the floors, restraining patients, helping them remove restraints so that they don't get hit, bit, and slapped, those kinds of things, and assigning officers specifically to either buildings or departments so that they could build those relationships, do security awareness training, those kinds of things. And at the end of the day, once you build that trust with the security staff and the hospital staff, they then will talk to you about things. So then you have your early identification, your early intervention to workplace violence, because initially, if they don't know their security force, they keep that stuff to themselves. They don't talk to anybody. They don't even know who to talk to. But if you have that relationship between security and the community, they're going to pick up that phone and say, you know what, I heard a little rumor the other day on my floor, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it, but let me run it by you. And you say, absolutely, tell me about it. That's how you have to try to stop the gun before it gets to the door. Absolutely, security departments need to have the ability to stop an active shooter if they show up. And you need that level either through your local police department or within your own staff. But that is where you need it, up on the patient floors, inside patient rooms. When patients are in gowns, they don't have a gun. So that gun isn't needed to restrain patients. Good training is needed to restrain patients. Good training under the direction of the healthcare team and helping the nurses stop being assaulted. 80% of our violence is in the patient rooms. So I like hybrid departments, but I want them to be much more focused on their community and those relationships and feeling a part of the healthcare team. And it takes time. It's not something you can do overnight. It's something you have to do over time.
No, absolutely. And One thing that you mentioned that I'd like to circle back to is the importance of hiring right. Now, I know one of the things that you were very keen on was the psychological evaluations. How were those impactful on on making sure you find the correct people that really fit what the program's trying to achieve?
It's an added tool. When I first went to U of M, I thought, man, this is wasting money. But boy, it didn't take long before I realized how valuable it is, because they do have insights into that person's ability to make good decisions and for the right reasons. And for example, if through that testing, the doctor decides that this person is not flexible, they're inflexible. You don't want someone that's inflexible working in a hospital, because you want them to feel empowered to bend a rule. So, for example, there's no parking in the emergency department. At 2 a.m, the car comes up, the person jumps out and says, I've just got to call my mother. My wife is dying and she's up on the 6th floor. You got to go. You got to go park your car down here. No, that's where you say, hey, sir, I understand. Park your car here. Go see your wife. Come back in an hour and we'll get it moved for you. Okay. Taking it to the next level. And not everybody has that. Psychological evaluations aren't 100%, but they're definitely a tool to help not hire the racist or the bigot or the person that jumps up the escalation of use of force too quickly. That is where that tool can help you in making that decision. It is not 100% foolproof by any means, but it is definitely a tool in helping hire the right people for your hospital in your environment.
Excellent. All right. The other thing that you mentioned was training right as well. You want to make sure that people are trained properly, and you did focus on de-escalation. Are there any other skills that you think are really important to train on in the beginning?
Well, I think the de-escalation is a big part of that. I think the customer service piece is a big part of that. Teaching your officers how to properly problem solve, because there is a method to problem solving, and especially in a collaborative effort, because a lot of what you do in hospital environments is collaborative, including your threat assessments. So when you have a disruptive patient, you can't just throw them out the door, right? You have to bring in a team of professionals to evaluate what went right, what went wrong, how do we stop the violence of this patient, right? Because it could be the medication is not right. Sometimes medication causes patients to be violent. So, and making sure your officers are sitting in at those tables, not just you, but your officers, because that's how they get the big picture. That's how they understand how minds work and how the process works when you involve them. So anytime I had a serious incident and the debriefings, I made sure everybody that was involved sit at that table, along with the head doc and the head nurse and all the directors. The actual staff that were involved are sitting at that table too, so that they can do that root cause analysis and figure out, what did we do right? What can we do better next time? And as a leader, it's important you say that. You do not have to be perfect. As a matter of fact, if you try to come off being perfect to your staff, you're not going to win your staff, because they know you're not perfect, right? So being able to admit that, you know what, this has happened, it ended up being safely, but let's talk about how we could do it differently next time, is okay. Just don't make the same mistakes over and over again. But but by all means, a good leader has good emotional intelligence and is not afraid to say, you know what, I think we could have done better next time, and I will do a better job next time too.
It's a great point that you bring up, and that approach actually allows your frontline staff to see a little bit of the bigger picture, which normally they wouldn't necessarily be privy to. But I think when they have that understanding, it really impacts how they do their jobs, and they understand a lot of the thinking from leadership after they have those experiences. I know that's how it was for me anyhow when I was working in a frontline role.
Yes.
It definitely helped when my director let me understand some of the inner workings of the organization and just how some decisions get made. It definitely makes a difference.
It does.
Now, one of the other things that you talked about, and I think this is a really, really good point, is the relationship building, and how you gave this specific example of how sometimes the staff will reach out to security to let them know, hey, I heard this rumor, or things of that nature. I found this to be very true as well when I was working as a frontline guard. Building those relationships really, it was good and bad. It was good because I always had a good finger on the pulse of what was going on. It was challenging in the way that a lot of people only wanted to reach out to me, which sometimes even meant when I wasn't working, I was getting text messages saying, I heard this. So, but it was definitely good intel, and it really helped in a lot of ways. What are some good strategies that we can use? And I'm thinking the patrols or community policing, depending on what vernacular you use. I'm guessing that's a part of it. But what are some good ways to build rapport with the security teams and clinical?
First of all, it starts at the top. The security director has to have good relationships. If you are not good friends with your head nurse, the chief nursing officer as a security director, you're behind the eight ball already, because the majority of your staff in that hospital are nurses. And if they don't feel safe, you're not being successful in your job, whether it's a perception or reality. So that starts at the top and building relationships with the leadership of the hospital so that they get to know you and understand and trust you, because some of that will trickle down to their staff first and foremost. And I think that's a big piece of it. And then, community policing isn't just about, or patrolling isn't just about assigning a department to an officer and saying, all right, we're done. No, it's actually attending their in-service training. We came up with what we call a security academy, and there were 15-minute blocks of training. And if a department went through all 8 modules, they would get a pin, and they were now a reserve security officer because they had a higher level of knowledge. Anything to get your community to understand you and why you're here and what your role is. And then the officers take ownership in it too, right? Especially offsites. But I started using what we call preferred assignments. So I took community patrolling to the next level and actually developed a preferred assignment program. And I only took certain areas like my offsite health centers that had pretty good size. The officers would work most of their time at that location so that they could build relationships with the people in that building. And on the adult psychiatric unit, we had a preferred assignment officer there, so that they could build, because of the sensitivity of that area, be a part of the training, actually be an instructor, so that they would not only train security staff, they would train the clinical staff too with their instructor, co-training. We did that in the emergency department too. That was important. So that would be a clinician training as well as security, one of my officers, training CPI. So that's another way of getting around it. And of course, your security awareness days, celebrating your profession like Nursing Week, but we have ours in October, right? IHSS, Hospital Security Week. Every department in the United States should be carrying their flag. That's your time to shine, especially now, right? All of our hospital security officers are heroes in my book. They've been on the front line screening people, taking risk for themselves and their family. This is a year to celebrate them. And in October, we need to, sound the horns, ring the bells, and it's a great opportunity to do positive reinforcement. And I'm also a big fan. I'd much rather do positive reinforcement than negative reinforcement. And so anytime I have an opportunity to do that positive stuff, we're going to do it, right? And, I can't be more proud of being a healthcare security professional than I am this year, and all that we've had to endure, my colleagues and my friends at all the hospitals across not only the United States and Canada, but around the world.
Absolutely. And I guess kind of the overarching theme there is recognition. And I'm just curious, with your program, was there any built-in practices that you had for recognition, or did you have a strategy for recognizing staff?
I encouraged my supervisors to do immediate recognition. I always give them a pack of $5 cafeteria coupons. And if you see an officer or one of your staff going beyond the call of duty, you can give them immediate recognition. Just give them hey, go have a cup of coffee on me. That was outstanding. Doing just an email saying, recognizing someone for going beyond the call of duty, or going the extra mile for customer service, right? Because it's not just about saving lives, it's about customer service. It's about, and then we had a monthly recognition program where officers or employees could recognize each other. And then we had a year, at the end of the year, one of my staff passed away while I was there, and we created an annual award, a humanitarian award for one security person to get each year as a result of being nominated and selected and going beyond the call of duty in their work performance and total performance. So there are lots of ways that you can do positive reinforcement, especially in today's world with social media, and everything's instant now.
I'm with Tony DeDante from the Change Execution Group. Tony, can you tell us about the program that you're offering right now?
Right now, what we're doing is we have strategically built a program for people of color and women that helps to upskill them to get them ready for the next position, maybe 6 months out. It's a 6-month program. It's very participative. It's very deep into learning, and you're going to learn the nuances of what it means to be an executive in an organization in a global world, especially post-COVID. But one of the main themes of this that we have is, what is it that we as individuals and as companies need to unlearn in order to move our agenda forward? And that's a very challenging question for you, me, or any organization. And until we find out the answer to that, we are not moving. We are not moving forward.
Awesome. Listen for more details at the end of the show. Now, another thing I do remember you mentioning about the program as well is that there was, well, actually, you'd done another presentation about this that I saw at the one of the IHSS ACNEs. It was around diversity and inclusion. So as far as diversity and having a diverse and inclusive department, what were some of the strategies that you implemented to make sure that that was achieved?
Wow. Well, there's not one. I wish there was one solution to that, but it's you have to do a layered approach, like most things. So I did it through going to career fairs at universities in Michigan, the local ones, Eastern, Michigan State, particular, Central. I think we went to Western too, and I would send maybe a lieutenant or a sergeant and one officer. I didn't go because I wanted the peer recruitment. We set up a whole job board, so we did a lot of that. We tried to find magazines and newspapers and diverse newsletters and newspapers to advertise in, word of mouth. So once I would hire everybody I hired, by the way, had to interview with me before they signed on the dotted line. It's an adult type shake your hand agreement on performance expectations. And then we always met 6 months later to see if they were meeting those expectations and following through on their commitments they made to me when I hired them. And part of that is going back out and seeing if you can find people like you that have our same morals and ethics to work here. So we also did a couple of years, we did a referral program. So if you found someone, got them hired, and they made it through the process and became successful, you would get $500. So we got that from nurses. Nursing does that a lot. So there could be an incentive to go out and hire. And then the other piece of this is also educating your healthcare community, because I think there's a perception with some folks that, you have to have big, bulky men on your security team to help manage these situations. And it just isn't so if you have proper training, right? So, because one of my more effective officers was, about 5'4" and 120 pounds, right? But she could take him down if she needed to. So it's just a matter of training. It's not a matter of having to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, kind of thing on your department. And actually, in some cases, that person would intimidate the situation instead of calming it down, because they'd think you brought in Superman to deal with it, right? So it's a lot is around the training.
Awesome. Now, yeah, we've covered quite a bit there. Is there anything that you'd like to mention that I haven't asked you about to this point?
I can't think of anything other than, I'm at the hospitals that I've visited in these last, 5 years. Time flies when you're having fun. Consulting, that I'm amazed at the number of hospitals that aren't aware of IAHSS and the fact that they have healthcare specific training. And I'm amazed even that there's still hospitals out there that have maintenance working during the day because they don't think there's any incidents from 8 to 5, which is, really scary, right? So,
Yeah.
we have a ways to go. I think that in my many years in this business, we've come a long way, I think, but we still have a long way to go. And not only getting the proper training, the proper funding to run a good security program in a hospital so that you do have the ability to hire people that can be trained to function the way you want them to function in your hospital environment. because at the end of the day, you do get what you what you pay for, right? So I was lucky in my last job, my dream job, that I was able to hire folks mostly with degrees. And why is that important? It's a toolkit, right? So I like the fact that your goal should be you're never too old to learn. So what you do is you continue to go through this life of experience, but while you're doing that, you should always have a toolkit with you, and you should always be refreshing that toolkit. You do that through education, getting degrees, and also following through on certifications, professional certifications. You have to stay up with the Joneses. And, so when I was a security director, I encouraged my staff to go back to school, take advantage of the tuition reimbursement programs, continue to enhance your toolkit. It's a win for me. It's a win for them. They use that skill set while they're working for me. And you know what? If they leave me for greener pastures, I've been a successful leader for them. So I didn't expect all my staff to always stay, but I wanted them to leave for the right reasons. And as a security director, their success is your success. Your success is their success. Don't be afraid to hire people that have skill sets that you need on your team, and encourage them to use them and encourage them to be successful.
Excellent. That's some great advice. Now, from your perspective, what can we expect to see from Marilyn Hollier in the near future?
Well, I think I'm just going to continue to support IAHSS, and I'm also a member of ASIS International and their healthcare council. I believe I'm the vice chair of their healthcare council right now. So I believe in the future I'll be the chair through the succession planning. They're going through a lot of changes right now too. And continue consulting, hopefully continuing to help hospitals be safer.
Excellent. And do you have a special message for the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Continue to hold your head high. Continue to praise your staff. You all are going through some tough times right now, and you're stepping up to the occasion. And I'm proud to be a member of the healthcare security profession, and you should be too. And please, please recognize your staff and all that they do for you and for your patients and families.
Excellent. Great words of advice. Now, for anybody wanting to get in touch with Marilyn Hollier, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can email me. It's Marilyn, MARILYNH at srmcllc.com. That's my work consulting work. I do have an IAHSS address for the time being while I'm still on staff, and that's Marilyn at IAHSS.org.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today, Marilyn. I appreciate it. And there was a lot that we covered here, and a lot of good information in this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. All you do too. These are wonderful podcasts. I think everybody's enjoying them. Thank you.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Join us on Friday, August the 7th, when we're joined by Lauren Sergy. We'll be discussing communication and executive presence. If you haven't done so already, engage with the Healthcare Security Cast on social media. We have a Facebook page, a LinkedIn page, and you can connect with me directly on any of the social media platforms. My name is Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. I'm the only Brian Hamilton on any of these platforms. You can also visit my website, brianhamilton.com, for links to all of the different platforms. And before we go, Change Execution Group is a new sponsor of the Healthcare Security Cast. I'm with Tony DeDante. Tony, what was your rationale for coming on as a partner?
I have done a lot of work in the security field across the world as far as developing cultures and teams, and with big companies like BP and Shell Oil and Hewlett Packard, Harley Davidson. And I've been listening to you for a while, and I believe you're a thought leader in your field. The fact is you're getting out. Your guests are always informative. I always walk away with some information that I can use somewhere in another job or another speech I'm giving or somewhere where I'm teaching. But the fact that you have this ability to ask the right questions at the right time, I think is so powerful in the podcast world. And in a red ocean of podcasters that are out there, you're part of the select few that get it right. So I'm glad to get my company involved with you. I know I bring a lot of radically new contemporary content on leadership, on post-COVID business, how to navigate the corporate landmines. And I just think that there's a lot of synergy between the two of us that has developed and continues to develop. So I'm glad to share what I know with you. And if that gets you bigger and bigger guests, then great. But I love being part of the show.
Awesome. Well, there you have it from Tony DeDante. Tony, for anybody else who wants to become involved with the Change Execution Group, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah, so if you're interested in becoming a client, or you like what I'm saying, or hopefully what I'm saying is challenging the way you think in order to be successful in the future. That's really where my lane is. So we have a brother and sister company. We have the Change Execution Group, and you can find that on the internet. And that's a very old style website with a lot of great quality in it. And then you have 360 Life Transformations, which is a very relevant contemporary website. Together, the people that work for me in both companies, we do a lot of work together with clients. And so we think our websites speak for themselves, but you obviously at any time can get a hold of me too. And I take each and every call, and I welcome the challenge. I think one of the things about us is we have a process called Making It Better, which develops cultures that really thrive in disruption. And we're 200-0. In a field where 75% of change fails, we have found the runway, and we're continuing to grow that.
Till next time, stay safe and take care.